This call is now being recorded.
Hi.
So, Mr. Howell, I now have 2 Paisleys.
Well, I saw that new kiddo yesterday. You got little Miss Paisley Miller. Is that right?
Correct. So, Paisley Miller is now Paisley, and Paisley Garrett is now Pays.
Pays. Okay.
Pays. We just took the Lee off to make life a little bit easier.
Or, I mean, I sometimes we call her Pay or just Pay or, yeah. So, well, there you go. Hopefully, and I think your new Paisley Miller, do you have a brother, Paisley Miller, in 8th grade?
Yes.
Okay, I met her brother last week. So, okay, cool.
There you go.
I'll look for Miss Paisley Miller at lunch today.
So for the students who were absent, we started a new book yesterday called Clementine. There's at least 4 in this series that I know of, and they're by Sara Pennypacker. So if you end up liking Clementine, you can check out the rest of her books. So here is a picture that goes with chapter 3. Okay. Chapter 3.
I don't even want to think about the school part of Tuesday because it makes me too mad.
Margaret's mother sent a note to her teacher today that said, "Watch out, my daughter isn't left alone with Clementine."
I told my mom as soon as I got home.
Margaret's mother is upset right now.
My mom said,
I guess I would be too.
Then she let me stir grape jelly into my milk to make me feel better.
This is disgusting.
I must have still been wearing a mad face when my dad walked in because he just took one look at me and handed me the key to the service elevator. My dad is the manager of the whole apartment building. He says that means all the people who live in the building, and even the pigeons, are the boss of him. But he has keys to everything, so I think that makes him the boss. And he understands that riding the service elevator calms me down when I'm mad. Dad said,
4 times, sport, that's all. And there's painting up on 7. If the painters need the elevator, you have to get right off.
So I rode up to 7 to see if the painters needed any help. You never know. And guess what I saw? 3 men painting the ceiling on stilts. I'm not even making this up.
Need any help?
I asked.
Want me to put on some stilts?
Whoa. I guess they were being polite because they said,
No thanks, kiddo. We're all set.
Even though I could see they had a lot more to do. So I rode the elevator exactly 3 more times, and I went back home. When I opened the door, I could hear my mom still talking to my dad about the note.
How do you think that made her feel?
She said,
Imagine, as if our daughter is a common criminal.
My dad snorted and he said,
Well, that is insulting. There's absolutely nothing common about Clementine.
And then my mom said,
That's not funny.
And my dad said,
Yeah, it is. A little.
And my mom said,
Okay, I guess it is. A little. But what are we going to do?
And then I quickly closed the door and went back out before I could hear the answer, in case it was,
Let's trade her in for an easier kid.
sat in the lobby, waiting to get enough bravery up to go up to the 5th floor and say,
Sorry.
to Margaret's mother and ask her for a note that said,
I do not think your daughter is a common criminal.
Finally, it came. I did take the elevator to Margaret's apartment because I couldn't risk running in to old Mrs. Jacoby. Every time I see her, she hands me a $5 bill and says,
Run to the store and get me a box of Cheerios, dearie.
I don't like to do it because then I have to bring it back to her apartment on the top floor and talk to her while she counts the change and then hands me 50 cents. But if she asks me, I have to say yes because A, she is 400 years old and I'm polite, and
B,
I need the money because I'm saving up to buy a gorilla, and I bet they cost LOTS lots. Anyway, I didn't have enough extra bravery to say
no thanks
to her, so I walked back up the back stairway 5 times 12 stairs, which equals 60. And I went to 5A and I knocked. Margaret's mother opened the door, and she just stood there looking like a magazine picture of a mother and a magazine picture of a living room. And I said,
Hi.
And a bad surprise happened. Although I had never practiced it before, my voice sounded exactly like a common criminal's.
You can't play with Margaret today, Clementine. She's spending the afternoon in a room, thinking about the consequences of her actions, which is what you should be doing, too.
Okay, fine. She didn't actually say the last thing, but I could tell she was thinking it hard. Behind her, Margaret's brother, Mitchell, leaned out from the kitchen doorway so I could see only his head and shoulders. Then, even though he is in junior high and should know better, he grabbed his hair and pretended to yank himself back into the kitchen. And I laughed, even though I knew it was his own hand. I do not think someone should be called
the hard one
if they make other people laugh.
Clementine, there is nothing funny about this,
said Margaret's mother. I didn't tell her what was so funny, and I didn't say any.
Sorry.
And I didn't ask for a new note. In case I still had a common criminal's voice, I just ran down the hall. This time, I did take the elevator because I was
hoping
I'd run into Mrs. Jacoby so I wouldn't have to go right home. But I didn't. So I did. And when I opened the door to the apartment, I saw that our living room looked all wrong. My mother was working at her drawing table. Suddenly, I realized I had never seen a drawing table in a magazine picture of a living room. I banged the door shut hard.
Margaret's mother always wears a dress.
I didn't know I was going to say that.
Margaret's mother works in a bank.
My mother answered, still working on her drawing.
It might be the rule. Still,
I said,
I'm an artist, Clementine. I want to be comfortable. I get paint all over my clothes. I have to wear overalls or jeans. You know that, right? Yes.
I said.
Still.
My mother put down her pencil and looked up.
Clementine, do you sometimes wish you had the kind of mother who worked in a bank and wore dresses?
I nailed my mouth down so it couldn't say.
Yes, maybe sometimes.
and quick looked out the window so my mother can see my eyes thinking it. Then my mother got up and looked out the window too. Our apartment is at the basement level, which is halfway underground. This means the windows are right at the sidewalk height. So we both just stood there pretending to be extremely interested in all the feet passing by. What was I really doing? What I was really doing was trying to imagine my mother in a dress. I guess that's what she was doing too. Because suddenly we both made corner eyes at each other and we burst out laughing and couldn't stop. Finally, my mother wiped her eyes and she said,
"Oh, come on. It wouldn't be that funny, would it?"
And I said,
"Yep, it would."
Then I knew it was exactly the right time to tell her my secret.
When I grow up, I might be an artist.
And do you know what she said?
"Oh, Clementine, you already are. You may end up being something else too, whatever you want to be. But you'll always be an artist. You just are."
And suddenly our living room looked exquisite, with a drawing table in it. But now my fingers itched to be drawing, so I put on my jacket and went to the park to find something interesting to draw. My dad says I'm excellent at noticing interesting things. In fact, he says if noticing interesting things were a sport, I would have a neck full of gold medals. He says that's a very good sign for my future. He says I could be a good detective, of course, but that noticing thing is good for any career. My mom says that means I could be a good artist too, or a writer. Last year, a writer came to my school and said,
"Pay attention."
But she didn't mean to the teacher. She meant pay attention to what's going on around you. You can write about it. Then she looked exactly at me and said to notice the good stuff and write it down so you don't forget it. So even though I'm not going to be a writer, too much sitting still, I notice interesting things and write them down. I draw them too. In the park, I saw something great right away. I saw a woman eating lentils from a thermos with a toothbrush.
Oh.
Even though she had a fork right there, which she was using to eat her salad. So I asked the lady if I could draw a picture of the lentils on her toothbrush, and she said,
"Sure."
So I did, and leave it on the floor. Here it is. I got lentils on a toothbrush. As soon as I got home, I wrote it all down and asked my mom if we could have lentils for dinner.
"You hate lentils, Clementine."
My mother reminded me.
"Well, I think I've just been eating them wrong."
I said, so we had lentils and I ate them the new way. And guess what? It worked. The lentils stuck on the bristles and didn't slide off like with a fork. So I got lots and lots of lentils in my mouth, which, was a bad thing because I hate lentils.
And today's final chapter, chapter 4. Do what? What'd you say? I'm sorry? Because of the light on my screen reflecting off of the page. I better not go to school today.
I told my mom Wednesday as soon as I woke her up.
I have cracked toes.
I put my foot right up on the pillow next to her face so she could see without getting up. This is called being thoughtful.
Nope.
She said without even opening her eyes to see if it was true.
Well, that's not all.
I said.
I also have the heartbreak of sore irises. No,
She said again, and she still didn't open her eyes.
actually, I have arthritis.
I said.
Mrs. Jacoby, she was breathing on me in the elevator the other day, so I just must have caught her arthritis. Oh, please.
She said, but this time she opened one eye, and then she made exactly the sound Polka Dottie used to make when she had a hairball. I grabbed the corner of the quilt and covered my head, but my mom pulled it off again. She took my head in her hands and twisted it around to see all the sides. Too hard, like I wasn't inside it.
You cut off all your hair?
She said.
You've cut off all your beautiful hair? What on earth were you thinking, Clementine? I wanted to make Margaret feel better.
I explained.
I didn't want her to be the only one, but I forgot. Margaret's not going to go to school today. She has an appointment at the orthodontist to have bracelets put on her teeth.
Mom groaned and closed her eyes again, but she slid over and made room for me on the warm part of her sheets. I climbed in and took a big sniff. My mom's part of the bed smells like cinnamon rolls. My dad's part smells like pine cones. Right in the middle, it's all mixed up perfectly. That's my favorite place to be. But this morning, Dad was already off to fight in the Great Pigeon War, and it was fine just being on the cinnamon roll part. My mom put her arm around me.
Oh, so now you'll be the only one,
She said.
I'm sorry, honey, but you can't stay home. You have to go and face the music.
So I had to go to school, which almost turned out to be a very bad mistake because I almost had to go to the hospital with the ambulance and the sirens and everything. It happened in the principal's office when my teacher sent me there to have a little chat about sitting still. When I walked in, Principal Rice made the hairball sound too.
Clementine,
She gulped.
what have you done? You've chopped off your hair.
I was glad she'd answered her question, so I didn't have to.
Wow.
I said instead.
Clementine and Rice. We both have food names.
Miss Rice sealed her lips tight, like she was afraid her teeth were going to run away. Then she opened up a note from the teacher.
I can't help it.
I said before she could start the little chat.
I'm allergic to sitting still. Nobody is allergic to sitting still, Clementine.
She said.
Do you need to leave my room? Then stop. I am.
I said.
My brother's allergic to peanuts, and if he eats one, he gets all itchy and swelled up, and he can't breathe right. And if I try to sit still, I get all itchy and swelled up, and I can't breathe right. That means I'm allergic to sitting still.
Mrs. Rice squeezed her eyes shut, rubbed her forehead. I happen to know this means.
This idea is so bad, it's giving me a headache.
Because it's the face I make when my mother tells me to visit Mrs. Jacoby. The face never works for me.
Plus,
I explained.
if my brother eats even one tiny peanut, he might have to go to the hospital with an ambulance and sirens and everything. So if I sit still for even 1 minute, uh-oh.
I gave my body a little extra jiggle just to stay safe. I said.
Close.
Principal Rice sighed like a leaky balloon.
Clementine, do you think you're in class when you're in class, you could just try to wiggle a little more quietly from now on.
Well, I asked my body about this, and it said,
Sure.
so I told it to Mrs. Rice.
Sure.
I said,
Good.
She said,
Now, as long as you're here, how about we discuss your hair?
thinking about my hair made me think about Margaret. Thinking about Margaret made me remember about her getting bracelets on her teeth. I want bracelets on my teeth more than anything. But then I had a bad thought. What if they had pointy edges? I didn't want to have any pointy things stuck in my mind to worry me all day. So I looked out the window because the only way to erase pointy things is with round things, and clouds are good for that. Right away, I saw a cloud that would make a wonderful tattoo. It looked exactly like a dog, if dogs only had 2 legs, on the top and not the bottom. I'm not allowed to have tattoos yet, which is unfair. So for now, I just draw things on my arms so I don't forget them. But I didn't have a pen. I looked around the desk to see if Mrs. Rice had a tattoo drawing pen. And suddenly I realized something very suspicious.
I had never seen Mrs. Rice's arms.
They were always in principal sleeves.
Do you have a tattoo?
I asked.
Can I see it? What?
Mrs. Rice asked.
Clementine, we were talking about your hair. That was a long time ago.
I reminded her. I added a kind smile because it's not her fault she has trouble paying attention.
I've had students in my class like Clementine before.
Oh, I believe you. I think I hear one.
So tomorrow will be chapter 5. Or did you want to read chapter 5?
No, I'm
I'm
behind.
sorry, I can't hear you because someone in my ear is talking. Did you say no?
Yeah, because I'm behind today.
Oh, I am too.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
See you later.
See you in just a few.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, please take out your